The laughter reached her before the men did. Petty Officer Second Class Rena Odia kept her eyes on the inventory clipboard, counting crates of MREs she had already counted twice, while the sound of boots and mockery grew closer. 3 weeks undercover at Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, and she had learned to recognize that particular rhythm. Sergeant Breckenridge and his scout snipers were making their rounds again. She adjusted her glasses, the ones she did not actually need, and let her shoulders curve slightly forward. Supply clerk posture. Forgettable posture. The posture of someone who had never held a rifle steady at 900 meters while her target moved through a sandstorm. The warehouse door banged open. Breckenridge entered first, broad shoulders filling the frame. His patrol cap tilted at the angle of a man who owned every room he walked into. 3 of his snipers followed, their conversation dying just enough to acknowledge her presence before resuming at a volume meant to be overheard. Thompson, the lankiest of the group, gestured toward her with his chin. Looks like Supply sent us their best and brightest. Breckenridge's smile spread slowly. That is what I love about this base. Always someone around to carry our ammunition. He crossed to where Rena stood, close enough that she could smell gun oil and arrogance. Even the Supply girl could manage that, right? Rena kept her voice flat, her accent smoothed to nothing memorable. I can have the requisition ready by 1400, Sergeant. Before we continue, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you have experienced someone being underestimated where you live. Breckenridge picked up a scope component from the nearest shelf, turning it over in his hands like a man examining something beneath his interest. Tell me what this is. Rena recognized it instantly. N/PVS 30 clip-in night vision device, compatible with most military day optics, effective range enhancement of approximately 40% in low-light conditions. She had used one to eliminate a target in Yemen at 800 meters under a moonless sky. She squinted at it and shrugged. Scope attachment, I think. For the rifles. The snipers exchanged glances loaded with confirmation. Breckenridge set the component down with exaggerated care. This is exactly why women do not belong in combat roles. He turned to address his men, but kept his voice loud enough to fill the warehouse. No instinct, no knowledge. Command keeps pushing diversity quotas, and this is what we get. Clerks who cannot tell a PVS 30 from a flashlight. Rena's hand drifted to her pocket, fingers finding the worn edge of her father's challenge coin. She pressed her thumb against the familiar grooves while her face showed nothing. The warehouse door opened again, and a young lance corporal entered, her coveralls stained with grease and her expression shifting from purpose to caution as she registered the scene. Destiny Xiong stopped short, tool bag over her shoulder, eyes moving between Rena and the circle of snipers. "Excuse me," Xiong said, her voice carefully neutral. "I need parts for a generator repair." Breckenridge stepped aside with theatrical courtesy. "By all means. Our supply specialist here will help you." He leaned closer to Rena as he passed, dropping his voice to something meant only for her. "You know what the difference is between you and a real Marine? About 15 weeks of training you would never survive." His snipers followed him out, their laughter echoing off corrugated walls. Silence settled over the warehouse like dust after a convoy. Destiny set down her tool bag and released a breath she had clearly been holding. "I'm sorry about them," she said. "Breckenridge and his guys, they are like that with everyone, but especially with women. You should not take it personally." Rena allowed herself a small, tired smile. "I'm used to it." Destiny moved to the parts shelves, searching for what she needed, but kept glancing back. "I am Destiny, by the way. Xiong, motor pool mechanic. Rena, supply logistics. How long have you been on base? I do not think I have seen you around." "About 3 weeks. Still learning my way." Destiny found her parts and turned, something like determination settling into her features. "Look, I know it is not my business, but do not let them run you off. They have done it to 2 other women in support roles this year. Breckenridge thinks he is protecting standards or something, but really he is just a bully with rank." Rena studied the younger woman. Mid-20s, eager, carrying the particular weight of someone fighting for space in a world that kept insisting she did not belong. In another life, in her real life, Rena would have taken her under her wing, trained her, shown her what was possible. Instead, she simply nodded. I appreciate the warning. Destiny hesitated at the door. Some of us eat together at the DFAC around 1800, if you want company. After she left, Rena stood alone in the warehouse, surrounded by crates and silence and the fading ghost of laughter. She pulled out her father's coin and held it to the dim light. One side bore the seal trident. The other was worn smooth from years of his hands, then hers. The hardest battles are the ones no one sees you fight. His voice in her memory, steady as a heartbeat. Her phone buzzed against her thigh. She checked the message through encryption protocols that would have made the base communications officer weep with envy. Asset making moves soon. Maintain cover at all costs. Trust no one in sniper platoon. Rena read it twice, then deleted it. She looked toward the door where Breckenridge had disappeared, toward the barracks where men who mocked her slept unaware that one of them was a traitor. Her mission had just become significantly more complicated. The enlisted club hummed with the particular energy of a Friday night, bodies packed tight around tables sticky with spilled beer and old grievances. Rena claimed a seat in the corner where two walls met, positioning herself with sight lines to both exits and the main crowd. Old habits, the kind that kept operators alive in places that did not exist on official maps. She nursed a soda that could have been anything stronger from a distance, watching the room sort itself into tribal clusters. Mechanics near the pool tables, administrative staff by the windows, and dominating the center like conquering kings, Breckenridge and his scout sniper platoon. They were loud in the way of men who had never been told to be quiet. War stories traded like currency, each one inflated beyond recognition. Rena listened with half an ear, cataloging details. Thompson had to tell when he lied, a slight pause before proper nouns. Corporal Medrano kept glancing at his phone, probably a girl back home. And Breckenridge commanded attention like a man born to it, his voice carrying over the din without effort. Staff Sergeant Jerome Pace sat slightly apart from the others, his laughter a beat behind, his eyes occasionally drifting toward nothing in particular. Rena filed that away. A man uncomfortable with his own tribe was a man worth watching. She did not see Gunnery Sergeant Tremaine anywhere. The man she suspected of treason preferred shadows to spotlights. Another detail filed away. Breckenridge's gaze swept the room and stopped on her. Even from 30 feet away, she could see the recognition spark into something predatory. He said something to his men that made them turn as a unit, a pack scenting opportunity. He crossed the room with the easy swagger of a man who had never been refused. His platoon followed, chairs scraping, drinks abandoned, the whole production designed to intimidate through sheer mass. Well, look who decided to join civilization. Breckenridge planted himself at her table without invitation, his men forming a semicircle behind him. Our favorite supply clerk, getting a taste of how real Marines unwind. Rena kept her voice mild. Just having a quiet drink, Sergeant. Quiet. He looked back at his men with theatrical disbelief. She wants quiet. Someone tell her this is a Marine bar, not a library. Thompson leaned in. Maybe she is looking for a date. Slim pickings in the supply warehouse. The laughter that followed had edges. Rena felt the attention of the room shifting toward them, conversations dying, faces turning. This was a performance now. Breckenridge playing to an audience. Tell me something, supply girl. Breckenridge settled into the chair across from her, close enough that she could count the threads in his collar. You ever even held a rifle? Real question. In basic training. Everyone does. Basic training. He said like a curse. So you qualified what, marksman? Barely? Rena had qualified expert in every weapon system the Navy offered, then spent 3 years learning to shoot things the Navy did not officially acknowledge existed. She shrugged. Something like that. Breckenridge pulled a $100 bill from his wallet and slapped it on the table. The sound cut through the ambient noise like a rifle crack. I will bet you this, right now, that you cannot hit a stationary target at 300 meters. He raised his voice for the room. That is less than a third of what my guys shoot in their sleep. Basic qualifying distance. Easy money for anyone with actual skills. His platoon began adding bills to the pile. 20s and 50s accumulated until the stack represented more than some privates made in a week. Rena counted $500 on a scarred wooden table, surrounded by men who wanted to watch her fail. Pace did not add to the pile. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The room had gone quiet. Rena felt the weight of expectations pressing from all directions. The smart play was to decline. Laugh it off. Protect her cover and let them have their moment of superiority. Then she saw Destiny. The young mechanic had entered without Rena noticing, drawn by the commotion. She stood near the bar, watching with an expression caught between hope and resignation. When their eyes met, Destiny gave a small nod. Almost like encouragement, almost like belief. Breckenridge followed Rena's gaze, and his smile sharpened. Oh, you know Shion? Another one of Command's diversity experiments. He raised his voice further. Tell you what, I will give little Destiny here the same odds. Either of you hit that target, you split the pot. Should make it easy, right? 2 chances instead of 1. Destiny's face flushed. She started to speak, but Rena was already standing. Fine. She said it quietly, but the word carried. I will take your bet. The silence that followed lasted 3 heartbeats. Then Breckenridge laughed, delighted, and the room exhaled into chaos. Bets placed on the margins. Odds calculated. A date set for 2 days out, enough time to spread the word and maximize the humiliation. Breckenridge stood and extended his hand with mock formality. Saturday at 0900, main rifle range. Do not be late, supply girl. He paused, leaning close enough that only she could hear. I'm going to enjoy watching you choke. He walked away with his winnings still on the table, a promise held in escrow. The crowd dispersed slowly, buzzing with anticipation. Rena remained standing, processing what she had just done. She had taken the bait to protect Destiny from becoming the target. Noble, stupid, potentially mission-compromising. Destiny appeared at her elbow, voice low and urgent. You did not have to do that. I can handle their garbage. I know you can. Rena finally sat, her legs slightly unsteady from adrenaline she had not let herself feel. But I cannot watch him turn that on you. Can you actually shoot? The question hung between them, innocent and impossible to answer honestly. Rena picked up her soda. I guess we will find out Saturday. Later, alone in her quarters, Rena sat on the edge of her bunk and held her father's coin. The room was small and impersonal, standard base housing for transient personnel. Her real equipment was hidden beneath a false panel in the closet, waiting for the moment her cover became irrelevant. She thought about the bet, about Destiny's face, about the $500 that meant nothing compared to what she was really gambling. Her encrypted line buzzed. She checked the message, already knowing it would make everything harder. Mole planning handoff within 72 hours. Timeline accelerating. Maintain position. Do not engage. 72 hours. The shooting match was in 48. Rena closed her eyes and saw the path branching before her. One direction led to mission success, to the traitor exposed, to quiet commendations in classified files. The other led to a rifle range and a room full of people who needed to believe in something. She was not sure she could walk both paths, but she was certain she had to try. The supply warehouse became a fishbowl overnight. Every Marine who wandered in for requisition forms or equipment transfers found an excuse to linger, studying Rena like she was a puzzle they could not quite solve. Word of the bet had spread across Miramar with the speed of wildfire through dry brush. Rena ignored the attention and focused on her real work. She had narrowed the mole to 3 suspects with access to the classified sniper technology being leaked. Gunnery Sergeant Tremaine topped the list, but 2 others in the platoon support structure had the clearance and opportunity. Evidence was what she needed, something concrete enough to justify extraction and prosecution. The manifest spread across her desk told a story if you knew how to read them. Equipment signed out against logged returns. The numbers did not match. Someone had been moving hardware off base in quantities too small to trigger automatic audits, but too consistent to be accident. Rena traced the discrepancies through 6 months of records. Every anomaly connected to authorizations bearing the same signature. Tremaine. The warehouse door opened, and she covered the manifest with a parts catalog in one smooth motion. Corporal Medrano entered, the sniper with a girlfriend back home, his expression caught somewhere between embarrassment and duty. Sergeant Breckenridge sent me to check if you need any pointers before Saturday. He says he does not want anyone claiming the match was unfair. The words carried the hollow ring of a script poorly memorized. Rena recognized the move. Breckenridge was not offering help. He was sending scouts to gauge her confidence, to report back on whether she seemed nervous or prepared. She let uncertainty creep into her voice. That is thoughtful, but I think I will just do my best and see what happens. Medrano nodded, mission accomplished, and retreated without further conversation. Rena waited until his footsteps faded before returning to the manifests. The pattern was clear now. Tremaine had been bleeding equipment for months, small enough to escape notice, steady enough to suggest a long-term operation. The question was where it went after leaving his hands. She photographed the relevant pages with a device disguised as a standard smartphone, encryption protocols rendering the images unreadable to anyone without the proper keys. Lieutenant Commander Hadid would want to see this. The afternoon brought a stream of visitors with transparent motivations. A logistics sergeant who never needed logistics advice. A motor pool corporal who had somehow lost his vehicle maintenance forms. 2 privates who giggled through a request for tent stakes in quantities no reasonable camping trip required. Each one studied her. Each one left with nothing useful to report. By 1600, the parade had slowed enough for Rena to slip away from the warehouse. She needed eyes on Tremaine, needed to understand his patterns before the timeline collapsed entirely. She found him on the observation deck overlooking the main rifle range, watching his snipers run drills with the quiet intensity of a man cataloging weaknesses. He stood apart from the other instructors, arms crossed, face unreadable. Rena positioned herself near the water station, filling a bottle she did not need while studying him through peripheral vision. Tremaine was older than most of the platoon, early 40s, with the weathered features of someone who had spent decades in harsh climates. His uniform was immaculate. His posture suggested patience refined into weapon. Breckenridge jogged up from the range, sweat darkening his collar, and Tremaine's demeanor shifted. The hardness softened into something almost paternal. They spoke quietly, Tremaine's hand briefly touching Breckenridge's shoulder in a gesture of mentorship or ownership. Rena watched the dynamic with new understanding. Tremaine had cultivated Breckenridge, shaped him, positioned himself as the wise elder guiding the aggressive young warrior. It was a classic handler technique. Keep your assets close through emotional bonds rather than transactional ones. Whether Breckenridge knew he was being used remained unclear. Rena suspected he did not. The man was many things, but sophisticated enough to participate knowingly in treason seemed beyond his capacity. She finished filling her water bottle and turned to leave. Tremaine's gaze caught hers across the distance. The moment lasted perhaps 2 seconds. His expression did not change, offered nothing readable, but something in those eyes performed calculation. Rena felt herself being assessed, categorized, filed away for future reference. She walked back toward the warehouse with measured steps, resisting the urge to look over her shoulder. The evening brought unexpected relief in the form of Destiny, who appeared at the warehouse as Rena was locking up. "Jim," Destiny announced. "No arguments. You've been cooped up in here all day, and stress is bad for shooting accuracy. I read that somewhere. I'm not sure that is how it works." Destiny grinned. "Are you an expert on shooting psychology?" Rena almost laughed. "Not exactly." The base gym was nearly empty at this hour, most personnel either at dinner or preparing for weekend liberty. Destiny led them to a corner with heavy bags and handed Rena a pair of warm gloves. "My aunt taught me to box," Destiny explained, demonstrating a combination. "Jab, cross, hook, uppercut. Said every woman should know how to throw a punch." Rena pulled on the gloves and mimicked the sequence badly, letting her strikes land soft and awkward. Destiny corrected her stance, adjusted her guard, showed her how to rotate her hips for power. It felt strange to learn something she already knew. Strange and unexpectedly pleasant. You are too tense, Destiny observed. Shoulders up by your ears. Relax. Easy for you to say. You do not have $500 and your dignity on the line. Destiny's expression softened. Look, between us, nobody expects you to actually win. Breckenridge and his guys, they train for this constantly. But just showing up, just not letting them scare you off, that matters. To more people than you know. Rena let the gloves drop to her sides. What do you mean? There are women on this base watching what happens Saturday, seeing if you fold or if you fight. Most of them have swallowed garbage from guys like Breckenridge their whole careers. Destiny threw a combination at the heavy bag, sharp and precise. You standing up, even if you lose badly, that tells them something. Tells them we do not just have to take it. The weight of those words settled over Rena like a second skin. She spent another hour at the gym, deliberately fumbling through techniques her body knew intimately, before heading back to her quarters. The base had quieted into evening routine, amber lights casting long shadows across empty walkways. In her room, she retrieved the encrypted communicator and sent the manifest photographs to Hadid along with her analysis. Tremaine's signature on every discrepancy. Pattern consistent with long-term asset development. Recommence surveillance escalation. The response came faster than expected. Confirmed. Tremaine is primary target. Training exercise scheduled in 48 hours at coordinates east of base. Intercept suggests handoff plan for that location. Maintain position. Evidence of exchange required for prosecution. Rena read the message twice. The training exercise. Tremaine was using his own platoon as cover for a treason meeting. The audacity of it spoke to either desperation or absolute confidence that no one was watching. She was watching, but the timeline had just become a vice. The shooting match and the potential handoff occupied the same window. She could not be in both places, could not maintain her cover and gather the evidence needed to stop Tremaine, unless she found a way to be in two places at once. Rena sat in the darkness of her small room, turning her father's coin over and over, feeling the weight of impossible choices pressing down. Hadid's voice came through the encrypted channel with the calm of a man who had delivered impossible orders before. Tremaine has been active for at least 3 years. The network he services has compromised targeting systems across 2 theaters. This is not a small operation, Rena. She sat in her quarters, door locked, lights off, communicator pressed to her ear. And you need evidence of the actual exchange. Without it, he lawyers up and the network goes dark. We lose 3 years of work and they resurface somewhere else with better security. Hadid paused. I know the timing is difficult. Difficult. Rena almost laughed. The shooting match is Saturday morning. The training exercise leaves Saturday morning. I cannot be at both. Then you make a choice. The mission or the bet. The mission. Always the mission. She had known that truth since the day she earned her trident, had lived it through operations that cost her sleep and friendships and any semblance of normal life. The mission came first, but Destiny's words echoed in her memory. Women watching, waiting to see if she folded or fought. I understand, she said. I will figure it out. The morning brought flyers. Someone had printed dozens of them, plastered across bulletin boards and taped to bathroom mirrors and tucked under windshield wipers in the motor pool lot. The design was crude but effective. A cartoon woman holding a rifle backwards, crosshairs printed over her own foot, bold text announcing the time and place of what they were calling the main event. Rena found Destiny staring at one outside the DFAC, her expression cycling through anger and embarrassment. They think this is funny, Destiny said. Like your humiliation is entertainment. It is just paper. It is not just paper. Destiny ripped the flyer down and crumpled it. It is what they do. Make everything into a joke, so when they hurt you, they can pretend it was all in good fun. Rena took the crumpled paper from her hands. Then we do not give them the reaction they want. She walked into the DFAC with her shoulders straight, ignoring the whispers that followed her through the food line. Breckenridge was holding court at his usual table, his snipers arrayed around him like disciples. He caught her eye and raised his coffee cup in mock salute. Rena collected her breakfast and found a seat where she could watch without appearing to watch. Tremaine entered 5 minutes later. He moved through the room like a man who had long ago learned to be invisible when he chose. No one called out to him. No one waved him over. Yet somehow he ended up at Breckenridge's table without seeming to have aimed for it. The transition was seamless. One moment he was alone. The next he was murmuring something in Breckenridge's ear that made the younger man nod seriously. Rena tracked the interaction through peripheral vision. Tremaine's body language suggested instruction. Breckenridge's suggested reception. Whatever Tremaine was selling, Breckenridge was buying without question. The conversation lasted less than a minute. Then Tremaine drifted away, collecting coffee, exchanging brief words with a few other personnel, disappearing through a side exit. Anyone watching casually would have seen nothing unusual. Just a senior NCO making morning rounds. Rena had not been watching casually. After breakfast, she made her way toward the sniper platoon area under the pretense of delivering equipment requisitions. The building was quieter than expected, most personnel either at the range or in briefings. She found the ready room empty. The listening device was small enough to fit beneath a table edge, its adhesive designed to bond with any surface. Rena placed it in 12 seconds and was examining a bulletin board when footsteps approached. Breckenridge appeared in the doorway. His surprise lasted only a moment before hardening into familiar contempt. Supply runs do not usually bring you to our building. Requisition forms. Rena held up the folder she had prepared as cover. Someone requested additional optics maintenance kits. Breckenridge crossed the room slowly, deliberately invading her space. He stopped close enough that she could see the razor nick on his jaw. You know what I think? I think you are nervous about Saturday. Coming over here to see what real shooters look like. Maybe learn something. I was just doing my job. Sergeant. Your job. He leaned against the table inches from where she had planted the device. Let me tell you about jobs. My job is to train men who keep this country safe. Men who can put a round through a target at 1,000 meters while people are shooting back. His voice dropped lower. Your job is to count boxes. So maybe stay in your lane. Rena kept her expression neutral while her pulse remained steady. She had faced interrogators in windowless rooms who made Breckenridge look like a children's entertainer. Is there anything else? Yeah. He straightened, satisfied with whatever he saw in her face. Show up Saturday. I want everyone to see exactly what happens when quotas replace qualifications. She left without responding, folder clutched to her chest, playing the part of a woman properly intimidated. Behind her, Breckenridge laughed and called something to a sniper who had appeared in the hallway. The listening device began transmitting the moment she was out of range. That afternoon, Rena found Staff Sergeant Pace alone at the base coffee shop, staring into a cup that had long gone cold. She collected her own drink and chose a table nearby, not adjacent, not intrusive, just present. He glanced up. Supply clerk. Ready for your big debut? As ready as I will ever be. Pace nodded slowly, something working behind his eyes. For what it is worth, I did not put money in that pot. I noticed. The admission hung between them. Pace turned his cup in slow circles. Breckenridge was not always like this. When I first joined the platoon, he was intense, but fair. Good teacher. Somewhere along the line, it curdled into something else. What changed? Pace shrugged. His sister died in a training accident about 4 years back. She was trying to qualify for a program they were opening to women. Something went wrong. Breckenridge decided it was because standards got lowered to let her attempt it in the first place. That is a heavy thing to carry. It is a reason, not an excuse. Pace finally looked at her directly. He has driven away good people, women who deserved better than what he gave them. And the rest of us just watched. Rena heard the guilt beneath the words. Why are you telling me this? Because somebody should. And because I'm starting to think staying quiet makes me part of the problem. He stood, leaving his cold coffee on the table, and paused before walking away. Good luck Saturday. Whatever happens. After he left, Rena sat with the weight of what he had shared. Breckenridge's cruelty had roots in grief, twisted by years into something poisonous. It did not excuse him, but it made him human in ways she had not expected. Her phone buzzed. Audio from the listening device, automatically transcribed. She scanned the text quickly. Tremaine's voice, speaking to someone on a secure line. The training exercise will provide sufficient cover. If there are complications, the terrain will explain any casualties. Rena read it again, then a third time. Casualties. Tremaine was not just planning a handoff. He was planning to let his own platoon die. The men who mocked her, who bet against her, who made her life a daily exercise in restraint. Tremaine was positioning them as collateral damage in his treason. Rena closed her eyes and felt the mission shift beneath her feet. This was no longer just about catching a traitor. It was about saving people who would never know they needed saving. The day before the match arrived with a weight Rena felt in her bones. She had spent the night analyzing Tremaine's intercepted communications, mapping patterns, building a profile of a man methodically destroying everything he had once served. His son. The details surfaced in her research like a body rising from deep water. Lance Corporal David Tremaine, killed 4 years ago by friendly fire in Helmand Province. A sniper's mistake. The investigation was buried under classified seals, and the shooter was never publicly identified. Tremaine received a folded flag and condolences from a command structure that treated his son's death as an acceptable cost of operations. Rena understood now. This was not greed. This was revenge fermented into something patient and lethal. Tremaine had decided that everyone who wore the uniform deserved to burn for what the uniform had taken from him. Understanding did not make him less dangerous. If anything, it made him worse. A mercenary could be bought off. A man fueled by grief had nothing left to lose. She transmitted her analysis to Hadid and received a response that offered no comfort. Support team en route, but 12 hours out minimum. You are on your own until then. Do not engage Tremaine directly. Gather evidence only. 12 hours. The training exercise departed in 18. The math left no room for error. Rena was reviewing terrain maps of the coordinates east of base when someone knocked on the warehouse door. She covered the maps with inventory sheets and called for them to enter. Breckenridge stepped through alone. His presence without his usual entourage felt wrong, like seeing a predator separated from its pack. He closed the door behind him and stood in the center of the warehouse, studying her with an expression she could not immediately read. Sergeant. Rena kept her voice neutral. Can I help you? He did not answer immediately. Instead, he walked slowly along the shelves, fingers trailing across boxes, examining her workspace with the attention of someone looking for something specific. Tremaine thinks you are interesting, he finally said. Rena's pulse spiked, but her face showed nothing. I do not know what you mean. He has been asking about you. Breckenridge turned to face her. Where you came from? Why you transferred here? Your service record. I am a supply clerk. There is nothing interesting about my service record. That is what I told him. Breckenridge moved closer, his boots heavy on the concrete floor. But Gunny has good instincts. Spent 30 years learning to read people. If he thinks something is off about you, he is usually right. The warehouse felt smaller than it had moments ago. Rena calculated distances, exits, the location of every potential weapon within reach. Old habits, screaming warnings. Maybe he's just thorough, she offered. Maybe. Breckenridge stopped an arm's length away. Or maybe you're not who you say you are. The accusation hung in the air between them. Rena held his gaze without flinching. I'm exactly who my paperwork says I am. Petty Officer Second Class, assigned to supply logistics. If Gunnery Sergeant Tremaine has concerns, he can take them to my commanding officer. Something shifted in Breckenridge's expression. The hostility remained, but uncertainty had crept in around the edges. He was testing her, she realized. Tremaine had planted doubts, and Breckenridge was trying to confirm them. She needed to give him nothing. Is there anything else, Sergeant? I have inventory to complete. Breckenridge studied her for a long moment. Then he stepped back, the tension breaking like a wave receding from shore. Tomorrow morning, he said. 0900. Do not be late. He left without waiting for a response. Rena listened to his footsteps fade before allowing herself to breathe. Tremaine was suspicious. How much he actually knew remained unclear, but he was looking at her with new eyes. The cover she had maintained for 3 weeks was developing cracks at the worst possible moment. She spent the next hour reinforcing her supply clerk identity, creating false trails and paperwork, establishing patterns that would satisfy a casual investigation. It would not hold against serious scrutiny, but might buy time. Evening found her at the DFACE, forcing herself to eat despite a stomach tight with tension. Destiny appeared with a tray and dropped into the seat across from her. "You look terrible," Destiny announced. "When did you last sleep?" "Recently enough." Destiny did not look convinced. "Look, I know tomorrow is a big deal, but you need to take care of yourself. Passing out at the rifle range is not going to prove anything to anyone." Rena managed a small smile. "I will be fine. Will you, though?" Destiny leaned forward, lowering her voice. "I heard Breckenridge came to see you today. Alone. What did he want? Just trying to psych me out before the match." "Did it work?" Rena thought about Tremaine's suspicions, about the platoon walking into an ambush they did not know existed, about 12 hours until support arrived in 18, until everything went wrong. "No," she said. "It did not work." Later, alone in her quarters, Rena allowed herself to feel the weight she had been carrying. She pulled out her father's coin and held it in her palm, the metal warm from her body heat. He had given it to her the day she earned her trident. Stood in the parking lot outside the ceremony, because he had not been cleared to attend the classified graduation itself. His eyes had been wet, but his voice steady. "The hardest battles are the ones no one sees you fight." He had pressed the coin into her hand. "But you fight them anyway, because that is who you are." 3 months later, his heart had stopped in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. She had been in a country she could not name, doing things that would never appear in any record. By the time she learned he was gone, they had already folded the flag. She never got to tell him what earning the trident really meant. Never got to share the pride she felt every time she proved the doubters wrong. He knew she had made it. He never got to see what she became after. Rena closed her fingers around the coin and let the grief wash through her. Tomorrow she would be strong. Tonight she could be human. Her communicator buzzed with an incoming message. Final intel confirms 6 hostiles expected at coordinates, armed and prepared for resistance. Tremaine will guide platoon into kill zone under guise of training exercise. Foreign operatives will eliminate witnesses. Tremaine extracts under cover of chaos. 6 hostiles. An entire sniper platoon caught in crossfire. Tremaine walking away clean while the men he had mentored bled out in terrain designed to explain their deaths. Rena read the message twice, committing every detail to memory. Tomorrow she would lose a shooting match on purpose. Then she would save the lives of men who had made her weeks a living hell. The mission had never been more clear, or more impossible. Rena woke at 0400, hours before dawn painted the California sky. Sleep had come in fragments, her mind cycling through contingencies until exhaustion won temporary victories. Now she lay in darkness, assembling the day ahead like a rifle stripped for cleaning. The shooting match at 0900. The training exercise departing at 10:30. Tremaine guiding his platoon toward coordinates where 6 armed men waited to kill them all. She had run the scenarios a dozen times. Every path led to the same conclusion. She could not stop the ambush from here. She needed to be at those coordinates before the platoon arrived, needed high ground and clear sight lines, and the rifle currently hidden beneath her closet floor, which meant she could not win the shooting match. The logic was sound. When it would invite scrutiny she could not afford, would confirm Tremaine's suspicions, would compromise everything. Losing maintained her cover long enough to shadow the platoon and intervene before the kill zone became a grave. Rena understood the math. That did not make it easier. She rose and dressed in the darkness, muscle memory guiding her through routines performed in places far more hostile than a California base. Her SEAL equipment remained hidden. Today she would be Petty Officer Odia, supply clerk, unremarkable and outmatched. Tonight, if everything went according to plan, she would be something else entirely. Dawn arrived gray and cool, marine layer fog softening the edges of the base. Rena ate breakfast alone, watching the DFAC fill with personnel whose conversations orbited a single topic. The match. The bet. The supply clerk who had dared to stand up. Destiny found her as she was finishing coffee. I wanted to wish you luck before things get crazy. Destiny's smile carried nervous energy. The whole base is talking about this. I think half of Miramar is going to show up. That many? Word spreads. Destiny hesitated, then reached out and squeezed Rena's hand. Whatever happens out there, you already won something. You did not back down. That matters. The words landed like stones in Rena's chest. She thought about what she was about to do. The deliberate failure. The public humiliation. All the women Destiny said were watching, hoping for proof that standing up meant something. Thank you, Rena managed. That means more than you know. She spent the next hour reinforcing her supply clerk identity, reviewing cover documents, ensuring nothing would crack under the scrutiny that might follow. Tremaine's suspicions worried her, but she had faced worse. The key was surviving the next 12 hours until Hadid's support team arrived. At 08:30, she made her way to the main rifle range. The crowd exceeded her expectations. Marines in duty uniforms and civilians in weekend clothes lined the observation area, conversations buzzing with anticipation. Someone had set up a betting board near the bleachers. The odds against her were astronomical. Breckenridge stood at the firing line with his platoon, accepting congratulations for a victory not yet achieved. He wore his confidence like a uniform, crisp and perfectly fitted. When he spotted Rena approaching, his smile sharpened into something predatory. She almost did not come, he announced loudly enough for the crowd to hear. Must have realized what she was walking into. Rena kept her expression blank as she approached the line. The rifle waiting for her was a standard M16A4, borrowed from the armory, nothing special. Breckenridge's custom weapon gleamed beside it like a thoroughbred next to a mule. 3 rounds each, Breckenridge explained for the audience. 300 meters. Closest grouping wins. He paused for effect. Should be simple enough, even for supply personnel. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Rena absorbed it without reaction. She scanned the faces watching and found Tremaine near the back, arms crossed, studying her with the patient attention of a predator evaluating prey. Their eyes met briefly. His expression offered nothing readable, but something in his stillness confirmed her fears. He was waiting to see what she revealed. This match was a test, not of marksmanship, but of identity. If she shot like the operator she was, Tremaine would know. If she failed convincingly, she might preserve enough cover to complete her mission. The choice had already been made. Now, she just had to live it. Breckenridge went first. He settled into position with the practiced ease of a man who had done this 10,000 times. His breathing steadied. His finger found the trigger. 3 shots. 3 holes in the target, so close together they nearly touched. The crowd erupted in appreciation. He stood and gestured toward the line with exaggerated courtesy. Your turn, supply girl. Rena approached the rifle, lifted it, felt the weight settle into her hands with the familiarity of an old friend. Everything in her screamed to show them, to put 3 rounds through the same hole and watch their arrogance crumble into dust. She thought of Destiny's face, of the women watching, of every time someone told her she did not belong. Then she thought of the sniper platoon walking into an ambush, of lives that would end if she prioritized pride over mission, of her father's voice telling her the hardest battles were the ones no one saw. She raised the rifle, sighted downrange, and deliberately pulled her first shot wide right. The crowd noise shifted, surprise mixing with satisfaction. She adjusted her stance as if compensating, then pulled the second shot wide left. The third clipped the target's edge, barely qualifying as a hit. Breckenridge's laughter led the chorus. He collected the pot from the betting board and held the cash aloft like a trophy. This is what happens when feelings replace standards. His voice carried across the range. When we let people into roles they cannot handle. Remember this the next time someone talks about diversity quotas. Rena lowered the rifle. Her hands were steady. Her heart was not. She found destiny in the crowd. The young mechanic's face held disappointment she was trying to hide, belief crumbling into resignation. Around her, other women watched with expressions Rena would carry for a long time. Hope extinguished. Expectations confirmed. The cost of admission, paid in currency she had not fully anticipated. She turned to walk away and found Tremaine blocking her path. He had moved through the crowd without her noticing, appearing like a shadow given form. Up close, his eyes held the flat quality of a man who had stopped feeling things long ago. "Interesting performance," he said quietly. The words were meant only for her. "I'm not sure what you mean." Tremaine tilted his head slightly. "I watched your hands, the way you held a rifle, the way you breathed before each shot." He paused. "You know what you were doing out there. The question is why you chose to do it badly." Rena's pulse spiked, but her training held. "I am a supply clerk who took a bet I should not have. There is no mystery here." "Perhaps." Tremaine stepped closer, lowering his voice further. "Or perhaps you're something else entirely. Something that does not belong on a requisition form." She held his gaze without flinching. "If you have concerns about my service record, I suggest you take them through proper channels." "I might do that." He smiled, and the expression held no warmth. "After the training exercise, assuming nothing unexpected happens in the field." He walked away without waiting for a response, disappearing into the dispersing crowd. Rena stood alone at the rifle range, surrounded by laughter and celebration, knowing that her cover had just developed fractures too deep to repair. And in less than 2 hours, she would have to follow a suspicious traitor into terrain designed to swallow bodies. The crowd dispersed slowly, savoring their entertainment, leaving Rena standing at the range with the taste of deliberate failure sharp on her tongue. She returned the borrowed rifle to the armory and walked back toward the supply warehouse on legs that felt distant from her body. Destiny caught up with her halfway there. "Hey!" The younger woman fell in a step beside her, voice careful. "Are you okay?" "I lost." Rena kept walking. "That is what everyone expected." "That is not what I asked." Rena stopped. Around them the base continued its Saturday rhythm. Personnel moving between buildings, vehicles rumbling past, the ordinary machinery of military life grinding forward. None of them knew what was coming. None of them would until it was too late. "I am fine," she said, "just disappointed in myself." Destiny studied her with an intensity that felt uncomfortably close to insight. "You do not seem disappointed. You seem like someone carrying something heavy. Something that has nothing to do with a stupid bet." The observation landed closer to truth than Rena could afford. She manufactured a tired smile. "It has been a long few weeks. I think I just need some time alone." Destiny hesitated, clearly wanting to push further, but something in Rena's expression stopped her. "Okay, but if you need to talk, I am around." She paused. "For what it is worth, I do not think less of you. Showing up took guts, even if the shooting did not go your way." After Destiny left, Rena allowed herself 30 seconds to feel the weight of deception. Lying to enemies was part of the job. Lying to friends was a cost she had never learned to pay easily. The training exercise was departing in 90 minutes. She had work to do. Her quarters felt smaller than usual as she knelt beside the closet and removed the false panel concealing her equipment. The gear emerged piece by piece. Custom rifle broken down into components. Sidearm with suppressor. Tactical vest. Communications equipment calibrated to frequencies the base did not know existed. She assembled the rifle with movements burned into muscle memory, hands performing a ritual older than conscious thought. The weapon came together in under a minute, each component clicking into place with the precision of a Swiss watch. She checked the scope, verified the zero, loaded a magazine with rounds she had carried across 3 continents. This rifle had taken lives at distances most shooters considered impossible. Today it might have to do so again. She changed into civilian hiking clothes that would blend with the terrain east of base. Her military gear went into a backpack designed to look like standard outdoor equipment. To any casual observer, she would appear to be a weekend hiker heading for the hills. Appearances had kept her alive this long. They would have to hold a little longer. Her communicator buzzed, as she was doing final checks. Support team delayed. Weather grounding helicopters at staging area. New ETA, 6 hours minimum. 6 hours. The training exercise would reach the kill zone in 3. Rena read the message twice, processing the implications. She was alone. No backup. No extraction plan. Just her rifle and her training against 6 armed hostiles and a traitor who suspected she was not what she claimed. She typed a response. Understood. Proceeding to coordinates. Will maintain observation and intervene only if necessary. Hadid's reply came immediately. Do not engage unless lives are at immediate risk. Evidence of handoff still required for prosecution. If you blow cover without documentation, Tremaine walks. The mission parameters had not changed. Catch a traitor. Protect American assets. Do it alone because the cavalry was stuck in bad weather 200 miles away. Standard Tuesday. She was secure in her pack when someone knocked on her door. Rena froze. Her rifle was assembled on the bed. Her tactical gear spread across the floor. Her cover identity scattered in pieces around the room. If whoever was outside entered, everything collapsed. She moved silently, gathering equipment, shoving it into the closet. The rifle went last, hidden beneath a pile of laundry that would fool no one who looked closely. She kicked the false panel back into place and checked her reflection. Hiking clothes, slightly disheveled, plausibly someone preparing for a weekend outdoor excursion. The knock came again. Just a minute. She crossed to the door and opened it. Destiny stood in the hallway, her expression shifting from concern to confusion as she took in Rena's outfit. Going somewhere. Hiking. Rena stepped into the doorway, blocking the view into her room. Needed to clear my head after this morning. Destiny's eyes moved past her, catching glimpses of the space beyond. Her brow furrowed slightly. You have a lot of gear for a day hike. I like to be prepared. The silence stretched between them, filled with questions Destiny was too polite to ask directly. Rena felt the moment balancing on a knife's edge. One wrong word and a younger woman would push harder. One wrong answer and trust would shatter. I was worried about you, Destiny finally said. The way you looked after the match. Like you were somewhere else entirely. I appreciate that. Rena softened her voice. Truly, but I promise I am okay. Just need some time in nature. Destiny nodded slowly, accepting the explanation without fully believing it. Be careful out there. The hills east of base can be tricky. Unexploded ordnance from old training exercises. I will stick to marked trails. Another pause. Then Destiny reached out and squeezed her arm. Whatever is really going on, I hope you figure it out. She walked away without looking back. Rena closed the door and leaned against it, breathing through the adrenaline spike. Destiny suspected something. How much remained unclear, but the young mechanic was perceptive in ways that made her dangerous to operational security. It did not matter now. The clock was running, and she was out of time to worry about covers that were already cracking. She retrieved her gear from the closet and finished her preparations. The pack settled onto her shoulders with familiar weight. The rifle, broken down again, nested in a compartment designed to avoid detection. Her sidearm rode against her hip beneath a loose jacket. She checked her watch. The training exercise was departing in 40 minutes. The coordinates were 90 minutes by vehicle, but she knew back routes that would put her in position faster. High ground overlooking the valley where Tremaine planned to sacrifice his men. At the door she paused and pulled out her father's coin. Pressed her thumb against the worn metal. 1 shooter, 6 hostiles, 12 Marines walking into an ambush. The hardest battles are the ones no one sees you fight. She pocketed the coin and stepped out into a morning that smelled like salt air and possibility. Time to go to work. The hills east of Miramar rose in brown and green waves, scrub brush clinging to slopes carved by centuries of wind and occasional rain. Rena drove a rental car along back roads that did not appear on standard maps, routes she had memorized during her first week on base, while everyone else assumed she was learning supply chain protocols. The coordinates Tremaine had chosen made tactical sense from a trader's perspective. A valley ringed by high ground, accessible by a single dirt road, far enough from the main base that gunfire would not carry. The terrain would funnel the platoon into a kill zone, with no easy escape routes. Whatever story emerged afterward would blame training accidents or unexploded ordnance. Bodies found in difficult terrain. Equipment malfunction suspected. Investigation ongoing. Rena had seen those reports before. She knew how easily truth disappeared into official language. She parked 2 miles from the coordinates and continued on foot, her pack riding heavy on her shoulders as she climbed toward a ridgeline that would give her overwatch of the valley below. The sun had burned through the morning fog, leaving the air dry and sharp with the smell of sage. Her communicator buzzed as she reached a rocky outcrop suitable for a shooting position. Platoon departed base at 10:32. ETA to coordinates approximately 45 minutes. Tremaine confirmed accompanying. She checked her watch. That gave her half an hour to set up and prepare. Enough time if nothing went wrong. She assembled her rifle with the same precision she had shown in her quarters, each movement economical and silent. The scope mounted with a soft click. The bipod extended and locked. She settled into a prone position and began scanning the terrain below. The valley spread out like a diorama built for ambush. A dirt road wound through the center, terminating at a flat clearing where vehicles would naturally stop. Hills rose on 3 sides, providing perfect positions for shooters to catch targets in crossfire. The 4th side dropped away into a ravine that would trap anyone trying to flee. Tremaine had chosen well. This was a killing ground. Rena identified 6 positions where hostiles would likely set up. Natural blinds created by rock formations. Elevated spots with clear sight lines to the clearing. She ranged each position with her scope, memorizing distances. 800 meters to the nearest. 940 to the farthest. Her range. Her world. Movement caught her eye on the opposite ridge. A figure settling into position behind a boulder. Then another, 50 meters to the east. Then a third, near a cluster of scrub brush. The hostiles were already here. She counted them as they took their positions. 6 total, spread across the high ground in a pattern designed to create overlapping fields of fire. They wore civilian clothes and carried weapons she recognized as for manufacture. Professional operators, not amateurs. Tremaine had sold his access to people who knew what they were doing. Her communicator buzzed again. Visual confirmation of hostiles. 6 shooters in position on Eastern Ridge, armed with automatic weapons, awaiting platoon arrival. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Evidence of Tremaine's involvement required. Rena did not respond. She understood the parameters. She also understood that parameters had a way of becoming irrelevant when bullets started flying. The next 20 minutes passed in the particular stillness that preceded violence. Rena controlled her breathing, kept her muscles loose, watched the hostiles through her scope as they made final preparations. One of them checked a phone repeatedly, probably coordinating with Tremaine. The sound of vehicles reached her before she saw them. Engines laboring up the dirt road, tires crunching on gravel. The platoon was arriving. 2 trucks appeared around the final bend and rolled into the clearing. Marines piled out, stretching legs stiff from the drive, joking with each other in the easy way of men who did not know they were standing in their own graves. Rena recognized Breckinridge immediately. He moved among his men with the confidence of a leader in his element, issuing orders, pointing toward terrain features. Whatever Tremaine had told him about this exercise, he believed it completely. Tremaine emerged from the lead vehicle last. He stood apart from the platoon, scanning the ridge lines with an expression Rena could not read at this distance. Looking for his contacts, confirming they were in position. Looking for her. His gaze swept across the ridge where she lay hidden. She pressed herself flatter against the rock, trusting her camouflage and the distance to keep her invisible. His attention moved on without pausing, but something in his posture suggested wariness. He knew someone was watching. He just did not know who. The platoon spread out across the clearing, setting up what they believed was a standard training perimeter. Breckinridge consulted a map with his squad leaders. Thompson cracked jokes that made the younger Marines laugh. Pace stood slightly apart, scanning the terrain with the instincts of a man who had learned to trust his gut. Tremaine pulled out his phone and sent a message. Across the valley, One of the hostiles checked his device and nodded to the others. They began to move. Rena watched them shift from concealment to assault positions, weapons coming up, bodies tensing for violence. The platoon below remained oblivious, laughing, talking, preparing for an exercise that would never happen. 12 Marines, 6 hostiles, 1 traitor, and 1 shooter on a ridge, finger resting beside a trigger, watching the mathematics of massacre assemble below. The hostiles reached their final positions, weapons trained on the clearing. Tremaine drifted toward the edge of the platoon, creating distance between himself and the men he had led here to die. Rena settled her crosshairs on the hostile nearest to firing. 920 meters, a shot she had made hundreds of times in conditions far worse than this. The mission said wait, gather evidence, let the handoff happen. The hostiles raised their weapons. The mission could go to hell. Rena exhaled slowly, felt her heartbeat steady into the rhythm that preceded every shot, and began to squeeze the trigger. The first shot crossed 920 meters in just over a second. The hostile nearest to firing dropped without a sound, his weapon clattering against rock as his body folded. Rena worked the bolt and shifted to her second target before the echo finished rolling across the valley. 870 meters. A man already spinning toward the sound of the first shot. Her round caught him center mass, and he tumbled backward into the brush that had hidden him. Chaos erupted below. The remaining hostiles scrambled for cover, their ambush shattered by an enemy they could not see. The platoon hit the dirt on instinct, Marines shouting for information, weapons coming up to point at threats they had not yet identified. Breckinridge's voice cut through the noise, barking orders. Contact unknown direction. Find cover. Return fire on confirmed targets only. Rena ignored the chaos and found her third target. 900 meters even. The man was running, trying to reposition. She led him by 2 body lengths and squeezed. He went down hard and did not move. 3 hostiles remained. They had gone to ground behind rocks and brush, invisible to the platoon but exposed to her elevated position. She scanned methodically, searching for movement, waiting for mistakes. One of them rose to fire toward the clearing below. She punched a round through his shoulder, and he spun away from his weapon, screaming. For down. 2 functional. Below, Tremaine was moving. She caught him in her peripheral vision, drawing his sidearm, positioning himself behind Breckinridge. The younger sergeant was focused on a ridgeline, trying to locate the source of hostile fire, completely unaware of the threat at his back. Rena swung her rifle toward Tremaine. 850 meters. He was raising his weapon toward Breckinridge's spine. She had 1 shot, 1 chance to stop a betrayal 3 years in the making. The round took Tremaine in the right shoulder, spinning him away from his target. His pistol flew from his grip and clattered across the rocky ground. He collapsed screaming, clutching the wound, his plans dissolving into blood and pain. Breckinridge whirled at the sound behind him. His face registered confusion, then shock, then something colder as he saw his mentor writhing on the ground with a gunshot wound. The 2 remaining hostiles used the distraction to break from cover and run. Rena tracked them but held her fire. They were fleeing, no longer a threat to the platoon. Let them go. Let them report back to their handlers that the operation had failed. She had bigger concerns now. The platoon was still in chaos, Marines pointing weapons at ridgelines, at each other, at shadows. They did not know friend from enemy. 1 wrong move, and they would start shooting at her position. Rena stood. It was a calculated risk. Exposing herself on the ridgeline made her visible to everyone below. It also made her identifiable as something other than a hostile. She raised 1 hand high, the universal signal of non-aggression, and shouted with everything her lungs could produce. Friendly Overwatch. Sniper platoon, you have wounded hostile at your 6. Remaining hostiles retreating east. Do not fire on this position. The words echoed across the valley. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Pace reacted. He swung toward Tremaine, weapon trained on the wounded man, and kicked the fallen pistol away from reach. Secure him, he shouted to the nearest Marines. Now, Breckinridge remained frozen, staring up at the ridgeline, where Rena stood silhouetted against the sky. Even at this distance, she could see his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. The supply clerk, the woman he had mocked for weeks, standing on a ridge with a rifle that had just eliminated 4 hostiles at distances his best shooters would struggle to match. Thompson was the first to break the spell. That is the supply girl. His voice carried across the clearing, equal parts confusion and disbelief. What the hell is happening? Nobody answered because nobody had answers. Rena began making her way down the slope, rifle slung across her back, hands visible. The descent took several minutes, each step bringing her closer to a reckoning she had been avoiding since the first day on base. The platoon watched her approach with weapons half raised, uncertainty written on every face. She stopped at the edge of the clearing and addressed them in a voice stripped of any pretense. Petty Officer Second Class Rena Oduya, Naval Special Warfare Development Group. I have been operating undercover on this base for 3 weeks, investigating the sale of classified technology to foreign actors. The words fell into silence. She pointed at Tremaine, now being zip-tied by 2 Marines while a third applied pressure to his shoulder wound. Gunnery Sergeant Tremaine is the source of the leak. He led you here to be killed as cover for a handoff to foreign intelligence operatives. Tremaine's response was a string of curses that confirmed more than any evidence file could. Breckinridge finally found his voice. You are a SEAL. Yes, the shooting match. You missed on purpose. Rena held his gaze. Maintaining my cover was more important than winning a bet. The silence that followed was heavier than the gunfire had been. Breckinridge looked at his wounded mentor, at the bodies visible on the far ridge, at the woman he had spent weeks humiliating. You saved us. The words came out rough, stripped of the arrogance she had grown accustomed to. All of us, even after everything we did. Rena thought about Destiny's face after the shooting match, about the women watching their hopes collapse, about the cost of doing the right thing when no one would ever know. That is the job, she said simply. You protect people, even when they do not deserve it, especially when they do not deserve it. The valley held its breath in the aftermath of violence. Marines moved through the clearing with the mechanical efficiency of training, taking over where conscious thought had failed. Tremaine was secured and bleeding, his shoulder wound packed with field dressings while he glared at everyone with the hollow fury of a man watching his plans collapse. The bodies on the ridge would need recovery. Reports would need filing. 1,000 procedural details waited to transform chaos into documentation. Breckinridge stood apart from his men, staring at Rena like she was the equation he could not solve. She let him process. There was no rushing this kind of recalibration. Everything he thought he knew about her, about himself, about the order of things, was reorganizing behind his eyes. DevGru, he finally said. The words came out flat, testing their weight. You are SEAL Team 6. Was. The designation is classified, but yes. And Tremaine. Breckinridge looked toward his mentor, now being loaded onto a stretcher. He was going to kill us. All of us. The handoff required no witnesses. Rena kept her voice neutral, factual. Foreign intelligence operatives do not like loose ends. Tremaine positioned you in a kill zone and signaled when you were in place. But why? The question cracked something in Breckinridge's composure. He trusted me. I trusted him. He was the best leader I ever served under. His son died 4 years ago. Friendly fire in Afghanistan. Rena watched the information land. The investigation was buried. Tremaine decided the Corps owed him a debt it could never repay. So he started collecting in other ways. Breckinridge absorbed this in silence. Around them his platoon continued their work, stealing glances at the conversation they could not hear. Thompson had stopped making jokes. Medrano kept touching his phone like he wanted to call someone. Pace directed the recovery effort with quiet competence, occasionally looking toward Rena with an expression she could not quite read. The sound of helicopters reached them before the aircraft appeared. 2 birds cresting the eastern ridge, military markings visible against the afternoon sky. Hadid's support team finally arrived. Rena watched them descend into the valley, rotors kicking up dust and debris. The cavalry, 6 hours late but present nonetheless. Breckenridge followed her gaze. Friends of yours. My handler and his team. They will take custody of Tremaine and secure the scene. She paused. Your platoon will need to be debriefed. Separately and thoroughly. Some of what happened here is classified. Of course it is. A bitter edge crept into his voice. Everything that matters is always classified. The helicopters touched down and figures emerged, moving with the purposeful economy of operators on mission. Hadid was among them, his familiar stride carrying him toward Rena while his team spread out to assess the situation. He stopped in front of her and took in the scene with eyes that missed nothing. For confirmed kills on the ridge. Tremaine wounded and secured. Platoon intact. The hostiles had automatic weapons trained on the clearing. Rena kept her voice level. Waiting was not an option. Hadid nodded slowly. The evidence we needed died with those shooters. Tremaine's communications were encrypted. Without testimony from his contacts, prosecution becomes complicated. He was about to execute a Marine sergeant in front of his entire platoon. Rena gestured toward Breckenridge. 12 witnesses saw him draw his weapon. 12 witnesses saw me stop him. Hadid considered this. Then his expression shifted into something that might have been approval. Messy, but effective. He extended his hand. Good work, petty officer. She shook it. The formality felt strange after weeks of being nobody. Hadid moved past her to coordinate with his team, leaving Rena alone with Breckenridge again. The Marine had watched the exchange with an intensity that suggested he was memorizing every detail. Your handler called you petty officer, he said, but you operate with DevGru. That means you have done things that never appear in any file. Yes, things at distances like today, 900 meters. Further, Rena thought about Yemen, about a sandstorm and a target moving through chaos and a shot that should have been impossible. My record is 947 meters. Confirmed kill in conditions that should have made the shot impossible. Breckenridge let out a breath that was almost a laugh. And I bet you $100 you could not hit a target at 300. 500 by the end. Your men were generous. He shook his head slowly. I have been shooting competitively for 15 years. I have trained snipers who deployed to combat zones around the world. And I could not make the shots you made today. Not consistently. Not under pressure. It is not a competition. No. His voice softened. It is not. He was quiet for a moment. Why did you do it? You could have let Tremaine's plan play out. Gathered your evidence from the aftermath. We were not exactly kind to you. Rena considered the question. She thought about duty and honor and the oaths she had sworn. She thought about her father and the coin in her pocket and the battles no one ever saw. Because the uniform means something, she finally said. Not the branch, not the rank, the commitment. You protect the people beside you even when it costs you something, even when they would not do the same for you. Breckenridge held her gaze for a long moment. Then he did something she had not expected. He extended his hand. I owe you an apology, he said. More than one. For weeks of behavior that was beneath the standards I claim to uphold. You showed more discipline in losing that match than I have shown in years of winning. Rena looked at his hand. She thought about every comment, every joke, every moment of humiliation she had absorbed to maintain her cover. And she took it. Apologies are words, she said. What matters is what changes after. He nodded, understanding the weight of what she was saying. I have a lot of changes to make. Around them the valley filled with activity. Tremaine loaded onto a helicopter. Bodies recovered from the ridge. Statements taken and recorded. The machinery of accountability grinding into motion. But in the center of it all, two people who had started as enemies stood in something that was not quite forgiveness, but might someday grow into respect. The return to Miramar felt like entering a different world. Word had spread through channels both official and whispered, transforming the base into a hive of speculation and disbelief. The supply clerk was a SEAL. Gunnery Sergeant Tremaine was a traitor. The sniper platoon had nearly been massacred in the hills east of base. Rena rode in the lead vehicle with Hadid, watching the familiar buildings pass with new eyes. Her cover was gone. Her mission was complete. The person she had pretended to be for 3 weeks had evaporated in the space of a few gunshots. Debriefings would consume the next several days. Reports to file, statements to verify, intelligence to catalog. The bureaucratic aftermath of operations always took longer than the operations themselves. But first there was someone she needed to see. She found Destiny in a motor pool, elbow deep in an engine compartment, grease streaked across her forehead. The young mechanic looked up at the sound of approaching footsteps and froze. Rena stopped a few feet away. Neither spoke for a long moment. So, Destiny finally said, "Not a supply clerk." "No." Destiny wiped her hands on a rag that only spread the grease around. Her expression cycled through emotions too quickly to track. "I heard what happened." "Everyone heard." She paused. "You are a SEAL." "Yes. And you have been lying to me since we met." The words carried hurt that Rena had expected, but still felt like a blow. "I was undercover." The lies were not personal. They felt personal. Destiny set down the rag. "I told you things. About my family, my dreams, my frustrations with this place. I thought we were friends." "We were." Rena stepped closer. "We are if you'll let us be." The cover was fake. The friendship was not. How am I supposed to know what was real? The question hung between them, heavy with the weight of broken trust. Rena thought about all the moments they had shared. The gym sessions, the meals together, the conversations about belonging and being underestimated. "When I defended you from Breckenridge that first night," she said quietly. "When I took the bet to keep his attention off you. When I fumbled through boxing combinations you taught me. None of that was part of my mission. That was just me." Destiny's expression softened slightly, but the wariness remained. "You threw the match. You missed those shots on purpose." "Yes." "Why?" "Because winning would have blown my cover before I could stop Tremaine." Rena held her gaze. "And because stopping a traitor from killing 12 Marines mattered more than proving a point to people who would not have believed me anyway." Destiny absorbed this in silence. The motor pool hummed with distant activity, other mechanics moving through their routines, unaware of the conversation happening in their midst. "I applied for a combat position," Destiny finally said. "Put in the paperwork months ago. Keep getting told women are not suited for those roles." She looked at Rena with something new in her eyes, something that might have been the beginning of understanding. "But you did what those snipers could not. You shot better than them, thought faster than them, saved them when they did not even know they needed saving. The job is not about proving anything to anyone." Rena allowed herself a small smile. "It is about doing what needs to be done, whether people recognize it or not." Destiny nodded slowly. Then she did something unexpected. She stepped forward and wrapped Rena in a hug, grease-stained hands and all. "I am still mad at you," she said against Rena's shoulder. "But I'm also proud to know you, even if I did not actually know you." Rena returned the embrace. "You knew the parts that mattered." They separated, and something had shifted between them. Not fully healed, but no longer broken. A foundation they could rebuild on if they chose. Destiny wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving a new streak of grease. "So what happens now? You disappear into some classified program, and I never see you again." "I do not know." Rena answered honestly. "My next assignment has not been determined, but I will try to stay in touch. Real communication this time. No covers." "I would like that." Rena had turned to leave, then paused. "Your combat application. Do not give up on it. The people who say women cannot do the job are wrong. I am proof of that. So are dozens of others you will never hear about, because our work stays classified." Destiny straightened slightly. "I was not planning to give up." "Good." The walk across base to the enlisted club felt longer than it should have. Every face that turned toward her carried recognition now, speculation, reassessment. The invisible supply clerk had become visible in ways that could not be undone. She found Breckenridge inside, standing near the same table where he had made the bet days ago. The room was quieter than it had been that night, only a handful of personnel scattered across the space. But word of her arrival spread quickly, and soon she had an audience whether she wanted one or not. Breckenridge looked up as she approached. He had changed since the valley. Something in his posture suggested weight that had not been there before. "I was hoping you would come," he said. "Your message said you wanted to talk." He nodded and reached into his pocket. When his hand emerged, it held a folded stack of bills. The pot from the match. $500. This belongs to you, he said, loud enough for the room to hear. You won that bet. We just did not know at the time. Rena looked at the money, then at the faces watching. Marines who had laughed at her. Marines who had bet against her. Marines who now understood exactly how wrong they had been. Keep it, she said. Donate it to a scholarship fund for female service members. Something that might help the next woman who walks onto this base and gets told she does not belong. Breckenridge held her gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. I can do that. He turned to address the room, his voice carrying the authority of a man accustomed to being heard. Effective immediately, any Marine under my command who harasses, demeans, or undermines a fellow service member based on gender will answer to me personally. The standard we walk past is the standard we accept. I have been walking past too much for too long. The silence that followed was different from the silences Rena had endured before. This one carried weight. Acknowledgement. The beginning of something that might eventually become change. Pace caught her eye from across the room and nodded once. A small gesture, but it said enough. Breckenridge extended his hand again. Thank you. For saving my men. For showing me what I refused to see. Rena shook it. Make it mean something. That is all the thanks I need. 6 months passed in the way time moves for people who live in shadows. Rena stood in a small briefing room at a facility that did not appear on any map, wearing dress whites she rarely had occasion to use. The walls were bare except for a single flag. The audience consisted of 11 people, all of whom held clearances high enough to know what DevGru actually did. Hadid stood at the front, a small case in his hands. Petty Officer Second Class Rena Odia. He began, his voice carrying the formal weight of official ceremony. For exceptional performance in the execution of Operation Coastal Mirror. For the neutralization of a hostile intelligence network responsible for compromising classified targeting systems across multiple theaters. For the protection of 12 United States Marines against enemy action at great personal risk. You are hereby awarded the Intelligence Star. He opened the case to reveal the medal, its surface catching the overhead lights. Rena stepped forward to receive it, feeling the weight of recognition she could never publicly acknowledge. The room offered brief applause. Handshakes followed, congratulations murmured by people who understood what the citation could not say. 4 kills at 900 meters. A traitor stopped mid-execution. A platoon saved from an ambush they never saw coming. After the ceremony, Hadid walked with her through corridors that smelled of recycled air and institutional coffee. Tremaine accepted a plea deal, he said. 25 years in a federal facility. His network is being rolled up as we speak. 3 other assets identified and detained based on intelligence recovered from his communications. Good. The Marines you save have been debriefed and released back to regular duty. Hadid paused. Sergeant Breckenridge has been making waves. Restructured his entire training program. Recruited 2 female snipers to his platoon. Apparently, he keeps telling people about a supply clerk who outshot everyone on his team. Rena allowed herself a small smile. People can change. Some of them. Hadid stopped at a window overlooking a courtyard she had never seen before. He handed her an envelope. Your next assignment. Whenever you are ready. She took the envelope but did not open it. The weight of it felt familiar. Another mission. Another cover identity. Another chance to do work that mattered in ways the world would never know. What about the women, she asked. The ones who were watching when I lost that match. Hadid considered the question. Breckenridge made a statement at the base. Public acknowledgement of what you did within classification limits. He did not use your real name, but he made clear that a female operator saved his entire platoon with shooting his best snipers could not match. He paused. Word spreads. Stories become legends. The women who watch you lose know now that you chose to lose. That changes the meaning of what they saw. Rena thought about Destiny's face in the crowd that morning. Disappointment transforming into confusion, transforming into something else entirely when the truth emerged. I got a letter, she said, from a lance corporal at Miramar. She was accepted into a combat training program. Said watching what happened gave her the courage to reapply after being rejected twice. Hadid nodded. That is the work that does not fit in citations. The ripples we create without seeing where they land. They walked in silence for a while, passing doors that led to rooms Rena would never enter, operations she would never know about, other shadows doing work as invisible as her own. I used to think the hardest part was the missions, she finally said. The shooting, the cover identities, the constant pressure of being someone else. And now I think the hardest part is carrying the weight of what you cannot tell anyone. She touched the metal through her uniform pocket. My father never knew exactly what I did. He knew I earned the trident. He did not know about the missions after, the shots I made, the lives I saved. She paused. Sometimes I wonder if he would have been proud or terrified. Hadid stopped walking and turned to face her. I knew your father. Not well, but enough. He was a man who understood service, who understood sacrifice. He paused. He would have been proud, Rena. Prouder than you can imagine. The words settled into a place she had not known was empty. Thank you. They parted ways at an elevator that would take her to ground level and eventually back to a world that did not know her real name. Hadid offered a final handshake. Take some time before you open that envelope. Rest. Remember what normal feels like. I'm not sure I know what normal feels like anymore. He smiled. None of us do. That is the price of admission. The drive back to temporary housing took her through ordinary streets filled with ordinary people living ordinary lives. She watched them through the window, these civilians who would never know how close they came to threats they could not imagine, protected by people they would never meet. In her quarters, she set the envelope on the desk and pulled out her father's challenge coin. The trident on one side, smooth where on the other from decades of hands seeking comfort in its familiar weight. She thought about destiny, pursuing combat training with new determination. About Breckenridge, rebuilding himself into someone worthy of the standards he preached. About pace, learning to speak up when silence was easier. About 12 Marines who went home to families that never knew how close they came to folded flags and empty chairs. The hardest battles are the ones no one sees you fight. Her father's voice in memory, her own voice answering across the years. But you fight them anyway, because that is who you are. She pocketed the coin and reached for the envelope. Whatever waited inside, she would face it the way she faced everything. With discipline, with skill, with the quiet certainty that some work mattered too much to leave undone. Outside, the sun was setting over a country that slept safely without knowing why. If you enjoyed this story, drop a comment and tell us your favorite moment. Share if you have ever known someone whose hidden strength surprised everyone around them. And remember that sometimes the people who seem ordinary are carrying extraordinary weight in silence. Rena opened the envelope and began to read. Somewhere, another mission was waiting, and she was ready.